Have you ever had that feeling? You know, where some massive, world-changing story is absolutely everywhere for a week, and then a month later, you can barely remember the details? It's like it just got sucked into a black hole. Well, today, we're going to figure out exactly why that happens. Why even the biggest stories vanish from our collective memory, sometimes almost overnight. Let's get into it. So, that's the big question, right? How does a story that takes over every TV screen, every phone, every single conversation, just poof, disappear? It turns out it's not just you being forgetful. It's a real phenomenon, and the answer is this incredible mix of how our brains are wired, how the media machine works, and of course, the crazy digital world we're all swimming in. Okay, just imagine this for a second. Let's use a hypothetical. Boom. Headlines explode. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been captured. Day one, it's a global shockwave, right? For a whole week, it's all anyone can talk about. You've got analysis, debates, the memes are flying. But then, fast forward just 30 days. What's the story? It's gone. It's already been replaced by 10 new things. That lightning-fast decay is exactly what we're here to unpack. So where do we even start to look for an answer? Well, the first piece of the puzzle isn't out there in the world. It's right up here, inside our own heads. It turns out our brains are literally designed to forget. Yeah, we love to think of our brains as these perfect little hard drives just recording everything faithfully. But they're not. They're more like a really aggressive bouncer at a club. Their main job is to filter things out. They evolved for one thing, survival. And that means holding on to what's immediately useful, like, where's food? Or is that a threat? And tossing the rest to keep from getting overloaded. And what's wild is this isn't some new discovery. A psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus figured this out way back in 1885. He called it the forgetting curve. And it's basically a graph that shows, with kind of brutal honesty, how fast our memory of something just falls off a cliff if we don't try to hang on to it. And just look at how steep that cliff is. This is wild. After a single day, just 24 hours, we've already lost about 70% of new information if we don't reinforce it. And after a week, forget about it. It's pretty much all gone. So when a huge story breaks, our brain's default setting is to start hitting the delete key unless we hear that story again and again and again. Now here's the cool part. Neuroscientists like Michael Anderson have a term for this: active forgetting. It's not a bug in our mental software, it's a feature. Your brain is constantly doing housekeeping, pruning away information it decides is just trivia to make room for stuff that actually matters for your day-to-day. And a political drama in another country, well, for most of us, that gets filed under trivia and it's put on the chopping block. Okay, so our brains are basically forgetful by design. Got it. But they aren't working in a vacuum, right? This brings us to layer 2 of our puzzle, the media industry itself, which acts like this giant machine that decides what we remember and what we're allowed to forget. And a huge piece of this puzzle today is trust, or, well, the lack of it. According to a major report from the Rand Corporation called Truth Decay, public trust in the mass media is hovering at a pretty dismal 41%. And think about it. If you don't really trust the messenger, how likely are you to hold on to the message? It's just way easier to let it slide. It doesn't stick. Plus, the news cycle itself is just ravenous. It has this constant, insatiable need for something new. Think about these stories. Ferguson, the search for Flight MH370, the war in Yemen, Gaza. Every one of these completely dominated the planet's attention. They sparked outrage, debate, everything. But the news cycle has to churn, it has to move on, and so these huge important stories fade from the headlines, and pretty soon, from our minds. Let's look at history for a second. Why do we all remember Watergate? Easy. Relentless day in, day out media coverage that hammered it into public memory for years. Okay, now have you ever heard of the 1920 Wall Street bombing? A massive terrorist attack killed 38 people, but it didn't have that sustained media spotlight, and so it just faded away, becoming a footnote. It just goes to show you the massive power the media has to either carve an event into history or just let it evaporate. Okay, so we've got our forgetful brains and the churning media, but now we have to talk about the third and maybe the most powerful force at play here, the absolute chaos of the digital world we're all plugged into. An economist named Herbert Simon basically saw the future all the way back in 1971. And this quote, man, it's more true today than ever. Our problem isn't a lack of information. We are drowning in it. The most valuable resource in the world today isn't data, it's your attention. And our attention? It is being pulverized. The research on this is just staggering. On average, when we're online, we switch what we're doing every 19 seconds. 19. That's it. You literally can't form a deep, meaningful memory of anything in 19 seconds. We are actively training our brains to be distracted, and distraction is the mortal enemy of memory. And here's the most important part. This is not an accident. This is by design. Your social media feeds, the endless scrolling, it's all engineered for one thing: to keep you hooked, to give you these tiny little dopamine hits over and over. But that constant fire hose of new stuff actively fights against the deep focus you need to actually learn something and lock it into long-term memory. So you put it all together. We have brains that are built to forget, a media that's built to move on, and a digital life that's built to distract. You might be thinking, okay, so what? Who cares if we forget a few news stories? Well, it turns out this collective amnesia has a price, a really, really high one. Check out this one last incredible example from history. Everybody knows about the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, right? It's iconic. But did you know that on the exact same day the Peshtigo Fire burned through Wisconsin? It killed over 1,500 people. It is the deadliest fire in American history, by a long shot. And it's almost completely forgotten. It is the perfect, tragic example of how we as a society pick and choose what to remember, even when the forgotten thing is way, way worse. And that brings us to the real danger here. This isn't just about bar trivia. When we all forget the same things, we lose the lessons we need to not repeat our past mistakes. Our shared reality starts to crack and fragment into a million little pieces, and it makes us apathetic. It's so much easier to ignore a huge ongoing crisis when it's not the new shiny thing on your feed. We're literally eroding the foundations of a healthy society. So this leaves us with a pretty tough question, one I want you to think about. If our history, even recent history, now comes with an expiration date, what are we going to choose to remember? And maybe more importantly, what crucial lessons are we forgetting that we desperately need to build a better future? Thanks for watching.